Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Fine Scale Show. Tonight, January 16th, a postponement from last week. Um, Sorry, life gets a little busy sometimes. This time of year, it's busy for us all. But this is modeling season, unfortunately, to be so busy during such a time. But I am excited about a little cold weather and a little inside time. Uh, Miles is quite busy. Probably won't be with us tonight. He'll be getting prepped for the Springfield show week and a half. A bunch of us for the community are going to that too. I'm really excited about that coming up. And Ralph hopefully join us here shortly so we can talk about uh, something that he's doing much of the same thing. Um, Tonight I'm gonna put the camera up high and go over top of the module for a few minutes before show you what I'm trying to do. Um, to build any kind of serious detail, being down at the deck level or down at the workbench to work on it is an almost requirement. I build my track work at the bench and then take it to the layout. And maybe in future shows, when we do some more track work, I can show you at the worktop as we work on it. So tonight, we're going to build a base, a small diorama, and get the positioning of a couple structures, some structures that we've worked uh, on previous fine scale shows, and a few structures that are yet to come, all as basically backdrop flats. But I need to build a base for those to rest on. I'd love to get a hold of Gator Foam. I know that's what Ralph's using in the city area he's working on. If I had ready access to it, I would be as well. As it is, I use foam core, and I've done 4 or 5 of those already and have found success with it. So uh, most of us are familiar with it. It's quite common. I use it as road bed. I use it for a lot of things. It's paper with a foam center, 3/16 of an inch, give or take. This is the fairly cheap stuff. It's a buck a sheet, and it's fine. It's entirely adequate. I use it for a lot of purposes. Walls that it can't be seen on structures makes good material for that. I use it on the road bed as the lower element in my road bed construction for electronics. However, I buy this larger material from a side dealer, and it has a much stiffer cardstock on it. Where this material is quite flexible, I can bend it. Actually, up above me, the backdrop is bent, and I've just got foam core up there for now, and it's bent around a 30-inch radius or so, and it bends just fine. This stuff won't do it, and these sheets are quite a bit larger. It's fairly easy to get a hold of this stuff in 42 by 72, I think. So 4.5 or 3.5 by 6 foot sheets from my side dealer. I buy these sheets all the time for $5 or $6, and they're quite not as rigid as Gator Foam, but they are quite rich in material. So we'll work with this tonight. So for the first little bit, we're gonna work up top with a layout at eye level. There's a little bit of a reach, so I've got to position a ladder and get myself in position to do that. The little bit of work we're going to have to do up top. So in the meantime, we'll break for station identification. Johnny Reb, if you please, and I'll get camera positioned, and we'll do a bird's eye view for a few minutes.
All righty. Let's see here. Get this off of full screen so I know what's going on. All right. Just want to say go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check schedules for the Tuesday and the Wednesday night shows. The Tuesday, Wednesday night shows are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Thursday night General Talk show is at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And be sure and click on the eMag and sign up for a notification when that comes out. And that way you'll have a copy of it. It's a PDF, so you can read it on a large variety of different type of mediums, telephones, iPads, all that. Let's see, we've got tomorrow night, we got Into the Locomotive Shop with Joe Desmond. That show's going to be a little bit different. We've done a little test running and got things working now, so that's going to be a really good show. A little bit different format from what he's been doing. And then we got Thursday night show also. And then next week, January the 23rd, will be weathering workbench to mainline with Ralph. And then after that, we've got the Amherst show. Uh-oh, earthquake. Building just fell over. But as you can see, I'm trying to procrastinate and give Andy a little time here to get set up. So, also want to let you guys know, give us your comments on the shows and let us know what you want to see. Because we do have a few new shows we're working on for this year, but we'd like to get some more shows going, get them in the works. So, y'all give us the comments and let us know about it. You can go YouTube Model Builders. There's a section there for contacts. You can email me or email Big Bill. Give us your ideas.
All right, Johnny, I'm set up.
Oh, well, glad to hear that, Andy. You don't have any toe tags yet.
No, everything seems to have survived.
No, Andy.
So far.
Yeah. All right, so we'll turn it back over to Andy. He said he was ready to go.
Okay, so I've been positioning to get all this right so we can finish the detail on it. So I've got the walls built on the structure that we did recently on fine scale. We did a little bit of time on some plastic. I've got a rough skeleton of a structure that will go in this arrangement, although it doesn't match an exact prototype. So for now, that one is built off a prototype. This one, not yet. So it probably will be replaced by something in the future. I need to get the basic alignment, make some wall changes. So I've got the size of my street material, also made out of foam core, although I'm sure I'll pour plaster for it or something. The track so that I can work the profile alignment out. So I build road bed. I'll show you that in just a minute. Show you how the road bed is. But I'm using a piece of road bed track to make sure I get all my heights where I want them. So by the time I come up to foam core, I've got a height the height that I can work with. Since these tracks should be basically the concrete, the rails need to be roughly flush with this. I've got a similar situation where this structure has to go. It had a sloped roof on it, even despite the original structure I was working with having a flat roof. Great for most structures. The vast majority of industrial structures I see do have flat roofs. In this case, it did not. And since you're working off a prototype, you work with what you've got. This track will be built in place, built on a separate section from all the track work that comes here. There's a depot and the track work going through the parking lot, essentially, with the street just behind it. The street's going into a photo backdrop at some point. But that track will exit stage left, and I'll be able to grab a good 3 feet, maybe 4 feet of tail section. So you could put a 15-car cut of cars in here, which, according to the documentation that I found on operating, Norfolk and Western tended to bring around 15 cars. I found numerous examples of 14, 15-car cuts. So we've got to get this slope right. I'm going to build all of that into and all the supporting structure. So that structure, since it's a sort of a flat, we're modeling basically half the structure. Then if you build that as a single structure by itself, the supporting structure has to be quite a bit more robust. If I build that into my base so that the walls and roof section basically wrap around the base that I've got set, I could build that stuff a lot less structurally sound. I've got a lot more to work with, and I can do the vast majority of it out of foam core with possibly some, 3 or 5 mil ply, fairly thin ply to work with to build it up. But we've got to size these things out, get all the right sizes of what I've got to work with. This should be half of the roof, so we want that much for the backdrop. I had to use that much sizing to get this track out where it needed to go before I carved it into the styrofoam. Now that we've got a rough idea of where this needs to go, we know we're going to bring foam core all the way out to here, and that way we make an easy transition from where the foam core will end here, keeping the road bed removable all the way to the last minute, so I can do the street or the trackage and all of its profile and any concrete or gravel over this section, and make that butt to this so it remains removable with very little damage. Whereas if you plaster over the track work, or you have where the plaster is really close to the track work, it makes it very easy. It makes it very difficult to keep my pseudo head laid, but sectional track components removable the way I want to keep them removable. That way, this whole section is 3 tracks and several turnouts, 4 turnouts in a small section. This whole section is removable for as a piece of track work, so I could build all the turnouts and all the electronics and signals and servos for turnouts and all that substructured electronics is a removable component. So now that I've got all these gaps, basically where I know that everything's going to work, that we can take down the mock-up pieces and structure pieces we're working with, and we can build an actual structure to work with. All right. And all those rolling stock kits that we haven't built yet make pretty handy pieces for such work. Makes me not feel as bad about such a collection of rolling stock. So road bed, of course, most of you guys who've seen my road bed material, Homosote, like everybody else uses, with a foam core base, gives me a good spot for electronics to work on it. The lamination between the two gives me a lot more structural stability. Also gives me a good smooth surface that I can double-sided tape or screw or glue components. Like all my wire buses are under there, so when you take a track component off, its electrical bus comes with it. This piece is handy to use for checking spacing. So it's 2 tracks wide with the profile, so I can check how all the scenery contours align to that. And then once it's in place, I can throw a little bit of ballast down and cover the gap. Or it's a single track width for working with my single track components like that go here. All right. So check these away. Let's see what we got to work with in length. I'll probably have to measure and cut this on the workbench, but let's see. So we can come all the way out to there. Making these removable sections is infinitely easier. You can imagine standing on a ladder trying to work on this scene. You'd never put the amount of detail in it that you could do working down at a reasonable height. So we have and I'm relatively short, so that camera's a bit of a reach. We're getting ready to come back down to the workbench to work for a minute or two anyway. So let's get some rough measurements to work with. So we come to 4 1/4. 4 1/4, 6 3/4. Here, you guys can come back down here for a minute. Yeah, it doesn't like that tripod that well. Webcams are not the most elegant utility for such things, but all right. 4 1/4, 6 3/4. 6 3/4. But you can craft this in. Well, Mr. Hale. This big 4-foot ruler's infinitely handy if you're working with styrofoam. But if you like a hot wire cutter, it's not that big a deal. I didn't love working with a hot knife that well, and I may have liked it better. I probably should at some point try the Woodland Scenics wire mechanism, because what I bought was an actual knife, and it was a lot more than what I wanted. All right, now we got something to work with. All right, see, it's going to be a lot easier to have that much workspace. Of course, rarely do we have much for log, but I'm going to work on quite a few seeds that are right above this section, so I decided to set up a worktop over here, make it a lot easier to work with a section and set it back in place on the layout. Maybe make this a structure building. You end up having to have so many workspaces. Scenery doesn't work real well as a workspace with anything else. If you're doing much soldering, you might need a dedicated station for that. So it doesn't hurt my feelings to have a permanent workspace for doing structure work. All right. So now we'll have to build a support structure that holds this structure. Let's just come back around here. That probably looks better. Looks better. Sorry for all the bounces. We'll get into position. So now we can start figuring out what we're going to need for a support structure. Cut that out of that same material. Make a support structure, adhere that, put some blocking in. It'd be much easier to make that self-supporting without having to build an entire substructure or a truss system like what the structure would have in the prototype. If you can see inside of the structure, that makes all the sense in the world to build that kind of material. But if you're not going to see it, there's not much point in modeling what's impossible to see. So if you can't see the support structure, cheat. So we're going to use some foam to get that angle made up. Let's get our dock and get that width. I've planned mine so the dock sets out just past the edge of the foam core. That measurement right. Back that 7/8. About 7/8, 5.5, 5/8. 5/8. Five and five.
Gonna act together.
Hey, boss.
Hi there. Can you see me?
Nope, no video. Your audio. Got a bit of it.
Trying to get this dadgum thing to do what it's supposed to do. Dadgummit.
I gotta love.
Is that any better? No. Don't know why my camera's not showing up. Can you see me at all?
No, sir. Just avatar.
Dadgummit.
Right now, I got it on screen.
All right, this says it won't support on Chrome. So let's see if I can go to, on Google. Let me try Chrome and see what that does. Dadgummit.
All right. Rough cuts. Some supports. 10 and 5/8. Use this more solid material. 10 and 5/8. Ten and 5/8. Quarter by 4 and 5/8. Ten and a quarter. This stuff cuts just fine with an X-Acto blade. I go through blades a lot faster with the foam course. Foam actually is actually pretty surprisingly tough. I was surprised anyway that it was so tough on blades. But wallpaper knife's about my favorite modeling tool there is anyway. We're 5/8. Now find their pitch and make a few more supports, and we'll be able to entirely hold the structure up. And you can leave the walls removable from the structure. I've seen some people do some stuff with magnets that's pretty impressive with that. I've seen people doing lift outs with magnets, and I'm sold on that way to do that. But I've been thinking about doing more assembly with magnets as well, holding my dioramas or my bases in place, as well as in this case where the substructure is going to be an integral part of the diorama base, just holding the structure onto the structure walls components right onto the base, possibly with magnets. Make it really easy to get in. Like I've got several of this structure. I have the light boxes to go inside of it. But if you adhere that directly to the back of the wall, then you can't get access to it to clean it, maintain it, replace an LED, or modify your stuff. If there's anything I'm going to do, it's going to be change my mind probably. So this way you can keep the boxes as a part of the diorama, so the wall sections will come away from it. You can access all the diorama material. to get this measurement, get this pitch. Okay. Now we can make a direct correlation out of that pitch, especially since your interior won't be the same as your exterior. In my case, to make these interior supports, the roof has a, of course, it has the components. And actually, you don't see a lot of these components on new structures that a lot of these older ones did. But so in here, when you build this substructure, you've got an angle in there, but that angle is not going to meet any of the measurements you have of the structure because it's going to come up from the back side of this wall and meet the roof somewhere in that area. And especially with a pitched roof, flat roof structures are a lot easier to work with in general. But you've got a bunch of material, a bunch of things you're working with as the angle of the pitch, and you've got the step back of the soffit. This structure has several of the components that makes up this roof line. So on a typical roof of your house or of any pitched roof, you'll have the rafters come down or the tops of the trusses. You have a subfacial and a facial trim strip. The bottom section of this in the underhang is the soffit. And in this, in a lot of industrial structures, anything as highly detailed as what has a lot of trim and molding on it will have the component that's flush back against the structure's wall. That's called the freeze board, freeze trim, back against the wall. And you've got to figure for all of that depth to make this substructure, to make the support that sits inside. So, hey, Miles.
Hi there.
All right, you got it working.
Yeah, I had to download Chrome. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Chrome's not perfect. It does a pretty good job here.
It didn't like Google.
I'll grant you that. I figured you'd be pretty busy today too, getting ready to leave for Springfield. I'm pretty excited about the show.
We loaded 60 boxes in the car about an hour ago.
You already sent a lot of it ahead, didn't you?
That's going by pallet tomorrow to Springfield. We're going to take it down to the trucking company. That's why it's in the car now.
Yep. That's the way to do it.
Got to preload so we can be there first thing in the morning. If you want to come help us load out, that'd be fine.
Well, I appreciate the offer. You move a little closer.
Start driving now, you'd make it.
I'll give you that. Just barely, but if you lived a little closer, I'd give you. I could help you a little more.
No problem. Helping out a bunch just by being there.
Well, I've been meaning to go to Amherst for years, and it's just always such a bad time of year and such that I always just say, "Yeah, all right, I'll skip it again."
This was a good year not to skip.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the show anyway. I mean, if you as a modeler of any, and I've been to several shows lately, and they were all okay, but nothing like the shows I remember from back in the 90s that were, spectacular shows, big shows, Greenberg and some of those shows that were big, and NMRA had a big show. So,
yeah, this is bigger than any of those.
Absolutely.
Absolutely amazing. What happened to our other guy?
I'd say Ralph should be in here in a bit. He's
yeah, he may need Chrome also, huh?
Yeah, these machines get appears kind of finicky about needing some juice.
He's up there in cold country.
Oh, yeah. I'm complaining about the cold here, but it ain't nothing, they just laugh about the measly 8 degrees we are, 5 degrees, whatever we are. I'm freezing to death. They laugh at me like that's T-shirt weather. You had any time to work on anything lately that wasn't show related?
Yeah, I've got a a little bit of an intro into my next video. I don't know if I'll get it posted before we get out of here or not. I'm going to try to. I'm going to start working on the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'd seen your last video posted about what you were doing. I know it had been a few years since I had seen anything about that. So
yeah, first thing I'm going to do is take the engineering modules. He makes so many, but he makes a really neat one that's about a ½ an inch by ½ an inch and, 1/16 of an inch thick. And it simulates a TV, an old-fashioned tube TV.
Yeah.
And so since the neighborhood, I'm counting that neighborhood's kind of mid-60s or so. I mean, everybody had a TV down the living room. Everybody sat down and watched Ozzie and Harriet, etc. And so one of the first things I'm going to do is show how to mount those modules up. I'm going to put one in every house because I think, when the lights are down, you can see inside. You ought to be seeing that flicker of that TV in the room.
Absolutely.
Going off. And,
yeah, that's a really nice effect. Whose modules are these that you're working with?
They're engineering.
Oh, yeah. I've seen their audio systems. Pretty
Yeah. He also has some lighting ones. He's got one that's a strobe light for like the aircraft landing light things on top of buildings. He's got all kinds of stuff, both lights and sound. And all of them are really reasonably priced for what they are.
Oh, his soundboards are trivially inexpensive. And
that's right. So are these things. And I really like them. He does a great job. He's provided a really economical board, in the theater where everything is super expensive.
Absolutely.
So I give him credit. And he should be at the Emmer show. He'll be there, I would think.
I've looked at his stuff several times at his site. I have not met him at any of the shows I've been to today. So
well, look for TV Flicker or TV Simulator. I can't remember how he labels it. I'll know by the time I put the video up. Anyway, I've decided this neighborhood thing. I'm really like doing the really short videos, and so I'm going to start keeping them, to under 5 minutes if I can, maybe even under 2 minutes. But just do quickies on how to do this or that or the other. And eventually, by the time I do enough of them, we'll have that whole neighborhood built, but we'll do it one step at a time. And then if somebody that's watching is not interested in how to build a lawnmower, but they want to know how to put in LED lights for a TV, why they can tune in just one episode and they don't have to watch 15 minutes of what is crap to them. Maybe valuable to me, but, you just want to see what you want to see and you want to learn what you want to learn. You don't have to watch 10 other things you already know about or don't care about.
Absolutely. I like the short format's probably the most desired. I mean, most people just don't have a whole lot of free time. So if sometimes you pick 10 or 15 minutes while you're standing in the kitchen waiting for the pasta to boil or something.
Well, if you're interested, I want to know how to put in a TV simulator, a couple-minute episode, and you got it, and order them, and you're in business. And you didn't have to watch 10 other things about the neighborhood in order to find out.
Well, you've moved on with so much of the railroad on the from your backdrop and the structures you've been working on, and it's been a while since you worked on that section, so got to come back to it with fresh eyes too. Though there's a value in that.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many people doing the really big buildings, but I printed one out for Larry Alford here in town, so he's going to have a couple of big buildings on his layout for the tour come this summer. Should be pretty good.
Yeah, you don't see. There's very few. Basically every one I've seen, I've always saved a picture of. Some of these guys who've taken some of the Imagine That laser art or Foss scale or various of these kits take. And these are not necessarily cheap kits. Even the Imagine That laser art, it's a third the price of the Craftsman kits. And still, they're taking 10 or 12 of those to build a structure.
Yeah.
you ended up with a whole room full of big structures. You know, you'd go broke trying to cut up walls.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, one guy layout I went to, he took, I think it was some of the Walthers, those big skyscrapers that they did, and he was making molds of them, you know, and adding them and making them 2 or 3 times as tall. And he really had the look of the big city. It was dynamite.
yeah.
He did an awful lot of casting to get there.
Rod Stewart has done a lot of that city structure style thing. That's he's used a lot of plastic kits doing it, and Bachman makes a lot of those.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, not Walters, but Bachman.
Yeah, they're seedscapes, or I think
cityscapes, or whatever they call them.
Yeah, their seedscapes product lines. Actually, Bachman's had a bad rap for a long time, and largely deservedly, but their seedscape products, I use some of their static grass material. That stuff's good as anything you buy.
Yeah.
And I think they're senior materials in those large structures, but you've got a task to do. If you want to pull off city structures, you know, you've got a task.
Yes. Yeah, the easy part in my layout was doing all those photo backgrounds, because you can do those in the computer and somebody prints them, and then all I have to do is 45 the corners and glue them up. But now I have to do the buildings that are 3-dimensional that are out in the middle of the railroad. Those are going to take a little more time. Yeah. Those are not going to go quite as fast as what all those background buildings did.
But when you have such a dramatic element, even if it's topological in nature, whether that's structures or mountains or cliffs, that's the thing. I mean, the details are great. I mean, this the thing I care the most about is the particular details. But whatever that is, if you're modeling in Colorado like you used to, the rocks are the thing you have to get right. That's the critical thing. You can get away with whatever flex track is on the market, but if your rocks aren't right, and in modeling Appalachia, the trees are critical. In modeling a city scene, the essence of it is the hardest thing you have to do on the railroad, because the volume you've got to do. The hardest thing to do, the thing you care the most about, is big brick structures, which you need 70 or 100 huge ones for.
That's right. Let's see if I can find what I just did for one of the clinics I'm doing at Amherst. I made some stuff up. I'll see if I can find it here, and I'll do a screen share. Might get lucky here and find it.
Well, while you're doing that, Union Pacific Asian Junction said that he just watched Fran do a show on trees. You're keeping her pretty busy, loading the car up with 60 boxes, and then she does a show on trees.
That's it. Never a dull moment. Keep them busy.
Yeah, Trainmaster. Yep. Oh, Trainmaster TV.
Yeah, that was done on Trainmasters. That's the latest one up this week for them.
Look good. That's a hard thing to pull off. Trees are just a hard thing to pull off. And that's why I started so early on trees on my land. I knew I needed so many of them, and they needed to be good. So I needed a whole lot of messing up. I needed to fill a few trash cans full of tree attempts. Because, just like the structures are on your layout, I could get away with less perfect structures on mine, but the trees are critical.
All right, Andy, how do I do a screen share here?
Down at the bottom of the screen in the center, there's an icon.
I see it. Okay, all right. Let's get rid of that. And oops. Let's see if it works. Okay, I clicked it. Are you seeing anything?
Yeah, it should ask you what screen. And if it's the first time you've used it on a particular browser, it may ask you about installing the plugin. You just a second, click the plugin, and it'll go. In theory.
In theory, yes.
Yeah.
That's not right.
So since I don't want all these supports built into the structure, since I'm building the supports built into the diorama base, kind of backwards of whatever common or popular adage. What I have to do is I will use a bunch of square stock to basically make troughs or slots for the ribs of the diorama base to sit in, so I could set the structure right against it and have ribs to keep alignment. All right, what do you got? Wow.
You see this?
Right.
Okay. That was on the layout that I did in Louisville. And that's a model of what they call the Great Rock Wall on the Denver South Park. That's a South Park Mason Bogie and a South Park passenger car. That wall is about 3 feet from end to end, and it was all hand carved.
Wow. All hand carved.
All hand carved. And then the rocks here, some of these are Woodland Scenics, and then some of these are Bragdon. They're big, much bigger ones, but they're all carved in between. But you're right, and we had talus down here at the bottom, had a rock that kind of protruded up into the wall, which kind of added some interest to it.
Absolutely.
So,
what'd you use for talus? Do you use plaster scraps and dye for talus?
Yes, in that case I did. Let's see if I can find my other shot. Hopefully, maybe not. Yeah, there's one. There it is. Okay. There we go. You see that one too or not?
Yes, sir.
That's the overall layout that was in San Antonio, Texas. And this is, the room was, I think, 16 by 24 altogether. I tried in my early years, every layout that I did floor to ceiling mountains. So this mountain that you see here in this peninsula, and here's the rug floor around in between, you could actually walk in and around all of these mountains. And these mountains were about 7 to 7.5 feet tall. So a person standing would only be about eye level with this upper track.
Awesome.
And the same thing you can tell by where my camera is here at the front. I was much lower than the mountain side here. And the same thing with the one back here. But I tried to do everything. I really like John Allen, and I did a lot of his stuff as far as how I tried to make things big enough and floor to ceiling. And I wanted you to feel like you were walking into Colorado, with your trains. I wanted you to feel like you were going someplace as you went around. But, and that's kind of the same thing that I'm trying to do now with the railroad, except that you're in Kansas City, you're in the bottoms, and you're walking essentially in the streets and looking at the buildings and the tracks, running in between them.
Yeah, it's the same topology, just what creates it. But the sensation of being overwhelmed by mountain and cliff line or being overwhelmed by big structure is a pretty similar sensation. That's
right. John Lawrence, my best friend down in Texas, always used to say I modeled the canyons of Colorado and he modeled the canyons of New York City. And I certainly don't have the canyons of New York City, but I am trying for the canyons of the bottoms area, the industrial area here in Kansas City, which ironically, and thank goodness, is still there. And for those that come to convention, you can actually drive through down there and see buildings that have survived from the teens, 20s, 30s, still in place. And you can tell where the tracks ran up the alleys in between the buildings. It's really a cool area to go into. You don't want to be there after dark, but during the day, it's what can I say,
Be spoiled by the opportunity to see something like it looked. And you would think modeling rural mountains, it's easy to go back and look at what it used to be. But where my railroad ran does not look anything like it did. Well, when you're looking at the details, it doesn't look very similar. There's tracks still there, but it's massively different.
Yes.
And that's just trees and foliage, but modeling
it's amazing that we have an area that's probably 10 square blocks by 10 square blocks, and it's all preserved. All the buildings are still there, which is kind of cool. And everybody's knocking everything down in a lot of other cities, but this one's been preserved. And I'll give a plug for the convention for a minute. Sorry, but take a commercial moment. If you come to Kansas City, you need to find an obscure museum called the Steamboat Arabia. This was found by a family from the Kansas City area here. They did all kinds of research in the old Missouri River. which used to wander, of course, all over the river floor, probably wandered a mile in either direction. Anyway, they found a steamboat that had sunk back in about 1880, I believe it was. And it was about, give or take, 50 to 75 feet underground, under the cornfield that they found this thing in. They came in and they dug out this entire cornfield and got down to this entire steamboat, the entire 100-foot length of it, and took everything out of it. There was an entire house, a craftsman house, that was being shipped in it. There were all sorts of nails and screws and fasteners that were being shipped. There was entire stock for a general store. All the clothes for a lady, all the clothes for men, all the shoes from kids to adult, china from England, preserves, canned goods. It's just amazing what it does. And the biggest problem they had was, at the time of this excavation, there were no freshwater conservatories. So they started a conservatory as a part of the museum for conserving freshwater, artifact.
Right, recovered artifact.
You can actually, as a part of the tour of the museum, you get to see all these exhibits of all these things that they dug up. But you can also tour the conservatory where they actually do this freshwater conservation. And they saved, I believe it was the back end of the boat with its rudder mechanism. And that gets sprayed down, I think it's twice a day, to try and preserve it, to keep it from, if they let it dry out, it would decay.
Right.
So it gets sprayed down with a special conservative spray in the morning and then at night. But you can go down and visit it, during the day, during your regular tours. It's an amazing museum down in the River Key area, which is part of the Bottoms area that I talk about all the time anyway. But it's kind of an obscure museum. But if you get a chance, you might want to, especially if you're interested in turn of the century type and before things. It's just a microcosm of us, 150 years ago. Really, really cool museum. Anyway, enough plugs.
Oh, I've checked that out. That's ideal. Something incredibly fascinating with that's why I love steam power so much. It's amazing what we could do in the early days with so little knowledge of what, and in most cases, we didn't know why it did what it did. But yeah, if you should so happen to set fire to it, there are effects, and, and gunpowder happens and things like that. But
one of the things they talk about is we destroyed ourselves, because as the steamboats would go along the river, they would lumber the trees. They'd take the trees, cut them down to get wood to burn in their steamboats. Then the stumps would rot and fall into the river, and that's what they called a snag. And that root with that tree trunk sticking out 6 or 8 feet that they would leave behind would then catch in the river, and the boat would come along and it would pierce it. And that's exactly what happened to the steamboat Arabia. It pierced it and sunk it out in the river. And a lot of boats went down because of the snags. Excuse me, so the boats were their own worst enemy. Fascinating stuff to me anyway. I thought it was really kind of neat. And like I say, it's the only place I've seen where there's like an entire house, an entire general store preserved, and all the things that went into the general store, all the things that went into building that house. It's just amazing.
Well, it's especially amazing if you've ever done any prototype modeling research or just the discovery of history. But what I find, I've always loved history and always looked at, watched history and read books on it and biographies and stuff. I've always been fascinated. But you think you're getting this incredible picture of all this detail when you read a really good book on something historical. But when you go to model it, when you go to recreate it, you realize so many things that you can't get the answer to. If you're just listening to somebody tell a story, you hear all these infinite details to give you this picture in your mind of what the world looked like, but you're filling a lot of that in, because you're not getting it. But when you're and you're trying to figure out, how did the buildings go together? Where they're highways or gaps between structures, fences, or where anything was to get anything close to it. There's just that's just cosmetic little things, but there's so much history that's lost. And even 100 years ago, steamboats from 100 years ago, there's a massive amount of that history that's just lost to time.
Well, the amazing thing to me was, as I played carpenter for a few years, but we have lost the fact that the square nails that were used back before the turn of the century and even up to the turn of the century are actually stronger than the round nails we use nowadays.
Absolutely.
Absolutely amazing. But we don't make them because it's more expensive to make the flat nails than it is to the square nails than it is to make the round ones.
Yeah, all the compromises and stuff. And again, what's amazing is that they were doing something better with no knowledge. There's no science. They didn't have physics. You didn't go to the hardware store and buy a nail based on the shear strength of the nail. They didn't know that stuff. They didn't know that they needed to know that stuff. Yet they built something that was stronger and superior to what we do with all the physics, mostly due to economy. But
yeah, really kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, I think the Kansas City show is going to be a don't miss for everybody. For everybody, that's just going to be a good show. There's a lot of people in that area that are, and you showed us a few of those people, a few of the layouts you see, like, Steve Priest's layout is I'd make the trip just to see your layout, but Steve Priest's layout is a spectacular layout, not by era, not anything close to my prototype, not by geography, but the sheer target that he's trying to achieve.
And the craftsmanship of it is just, amazing also.
Absolutely.
Trainmasters is going to do, I think, 3 or 4 layouts here between now and convention, and every one of them is really really nicely done.
Well, there's a tremendous number of layouts out there that are superb layouts, and you would think you could find out this information, but all the time I'm finding a YouTube video of a layout I've never heard of before that's been being worked on for 30 years. Never been published anywhere. It is spectacular. There's not just 1 or 2 of those. I see those all the time popping up.
Yeah.
The gentleman that worked with you on the that models around in upstate New York worked with you on the Toma project on Trainmaster. It has a layout modeling upstate New York. It's a single town. It's an entire basement modeling one small town along, and he worked with you. He was with you on the operations one, and on a previous one too. But I'll look him up here in a minute. But
okay,
we'll talk about him a little bit.
Hey, Greg and I have to stop and think about his last name, but he's doing Thurman on the West Virginia line, C&O.
Oh, is that right?
And Jim Udaley here in town, his layout will be on the tour, and he's modeling C&O also. O-scale, yeah. It's about a 4,000 square foot railroad. It's just fantastic.
And it's got layout all the way from down by your sheds, all the way, and for O-scale, and it's a good size room. You can't do O-scale and it not be a good size room. But it is a lot of it's a lot of railroad in a room that shouldn't contain that much railroad. Logically, you wouldn't think you could do it. But he got a lot of main line and a lot of operate. I've been following his for 15 or 20 years. He's been working on a long time.
As you first go in the door, be sure and look off to the left, because he has a real, actual, preserved dispatcher's panel. And the dispatcher, and it actually runs the railroad. It's a phenomenal thing. There was a person here in town who worked for the signaling manufacturer for the GE branch that made the signals, and he preserved that dispatcher's panel. It was being torn out, and they reinstalled it here and rewired it to fit Jim's railroad. It's a phenomenal thing to watch and to see go into action.
Yeah, and it's a Union Switch and Signal CTC panel that's like the Southern Pacific or some railroad used it, and they reconfigured it. Yeah, and a few people have pulled that off, using a real, US&S CTC panel. That's an undertaking, man. That is a hobby all on its own to restore a CTC panel.
Well, like I say, he had a professional helping him out, so that made it a little bit easier. And that guy is going to have his railroad on the tour as well. The guy that had the business with the CTC panel, absolutely fantastic.
There's going to be a whole lot of it. There are these little hubs in the United States. You know, New England has, you know, Nick Elwell from George Celios to Nick Elwell to Mike Hoffalo, one of my favorites in the hobby. A lot of modelers from up in that area, and you've got a few of the, and then you know you got the guys around La Mesa and Kansas City. You these little hotbeds of
it's absolutely amazing. And I think they really, you know, all of us feed off of each other. You know, there's a sharing of information. There's a camaraderie. There's all kinds of things that go on. Once you get somebody in an area that we always used to say, it's the old, well, if he can do it, I can do it type thing, you know.
Sure.
And that's somewhat true. I mean, you kind of fuel each other.
Well, two heads are better than one. So if you have a guy you could, you know, reach out to,
that's right.
Tried to do this before.
Hey, how did you solve this, or what did you do to do this? Yeah, it's a big help.
I'll show you what. So I'm making those ribs, and I put troughs. This trough is or whatever you'd call that, quarters. But these need to be so my ribs will set in amongst those tight. Since these will be a part of the diorama base, and the structure will just slide down over top of that, kind of like a glove. The structure sets over top of the substructure like a glove. Then I can hide these little boxes I've got.
Yeah, lights in the boxes.
Yeah. Actually, now I haven't bought machinery for them. I need to buy some 3D printed or laser cut, laser etched. But I've got 0402 LEDs and these 3D printed globes that I like to use real well. Schoolhouse globes. The little LEDs are fine. There's nothing wrong with them as long as you're not looking directly at the bulb. If you're lighting the structure, but otherwise they look wrong to me if you just look at the bulb. But if I put them in those 3D printed globes, and they're kind of hollow, and you can take mead green and soak them in mead green to clean up the material off the 3D printing process, and it'll kind of loosen and pull that stuff or let that stuff float out of the inside of these things. And then I fill those up with canopy glue, the LED down in the canopy glue, a frosted effect that's the webcam doesn't show it. I need to take some pictures. So
I understand what you're doing. Yeah, that'd be cool.
So I built several of these boxes, and I'm going to put machinery in there. This was a textiles meal. It was a women's lingerie plant is what it was. That's what it really was on the original prototype. But think bloomers, you know, you probably closer, but you know, in Appalachia. So, but it gives me some wood. It was there, and two, for my railroad, it gives me some diversity. This is a coal railroad, and I love long strings of coal hoppers. I do, but you need some more stuff happening there. So this structure, this is all along the back because you don't have to do much with it. You just got to shove big cuts of cars, so you won't be able to reach to the back of the cars. But I've got a spot where you can reach at the head end, so you can reach in to pick or to uncouple it. But this industry will take on the prototype, or on the prototype took around 15 cars. On my model, I'm trying to get it to take 10 or 12 minimum, and maybe 15 because I created a hidden tail track. So the track goes through the city, and I, you know, stuck a little tail track off in the scenery so I can take, you know, large.
Johnny, we getting any questions?
The canopy glue. Oh, well, I don't use like a white glue for much. I use wood glue for a lot of stuff. It's a much slower way to build a wood structure. And I see a lot of people use CA. A whole lot of people use CA. Every time I fiddle with wood that I built that was built with CA to go back and do detail to later, they're brittle. They come apart on me. Using wood glue, they're stout. I mean, these little thin laser cut structures are stout enough to toss around. So, but so I'm building these. This part of this I was talking about. So I cut a base to go at the back toward the left, so I can build all this structure, which we done it on a previous show where I finished these couple up. Oh, that's awesome.
Sorry, I just throw a picture up every once in a while. This is the same. Right. This is the other side of that first mountain you saw in that shot from San Antonio.
Yeah, so you're using you've used backdrops both, or mountains to do the division, where instead of having to have backdrops down the peninsulas.
Yeah, because you could walk up in here and switch with these tracks along here, and then there were tracks on the other side over here also. But yeah, I wanted you to be able to walk back in these aisles. This was probably about 2 feet, 3 feet deep, something like that. Tried to keep everything within reach as much as possible.
It still have that scenery to the floor, but it was almost vertical, right?
Yes, yeah. This, you can tell this is almost straight up and down here, and so were the mountains going down to the floor,
which is appropriate for Colorado.
Yeah. It's a roundhouse shot. That thing won the RMC award several years ago.
Did you scratch that structure, or is that somebody's kit?
No, it's all scratch. These are powerhouse windows or roundhouse windows. I can't remember which, but I cut the curves on them and then bent the wood to make them fit.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of these were off of a form, the scallops. But this is all off of the roundhouse at Golden, which is no longer there. I just thought it was really cool with these false front scallops at the top, plus the doors. They just complement each other. Absolutely. Really kind of a neat looking structure.
And a roundhouse is just such an iconic structure anyway. I mean, not that there's not a whole lot of railroady stuff that's that way, but roundhouse has a particular interest for most of us.
Yeah, and then I scratch built the gallows turntable to go with it. Really kind of cool. This thing, Fred Hamilton at Model Railroader, he used to be their advertising guy. I went to his house one night, and his head frame up here would spin really fast, and then it would slow down and stop. And then the cable would start coming back the other way, and it would start spinning the other way, slow and then faster, and then stop, and then go back the other way. I asked him, how in the heck are you doing that? And what he had done was he had where this cable comes back into the house, it went through a pulley down under the railroad, and it went to a fishing weight. Huh. But where it disappeared into this hoist house underneath there, he had a long arm. I'll stop sharing here and point.
Oh, please.
He had a pivot on his motor, and that arm would spin around. And on the end of it, he had a pin sticking out with his cable on it. So as it started to come down, it built up speed, got faster. Then it slowed down, and then it came to a stop. And then it would start to go back up the other side, spinning the other way faster and faster, and come to a stop. So it just sat there, and it went around and around. And as it did, it pulled the string down and then back up and down and back up. It was the simplest thing on earth to make that sheave go fast and slow and forward and back. And so that's what I did on that railroad. I put a motor underneath there because I thought it was such a cool idea. But I always give credit to Fred because it was he that I saw that had done it. He just had a little module, and that's all he had on it was that mine. But it sure was cool.
Well, I don't know how you can make much improvement on the mechanism. It's simple, but
it's the simplest thing you could possibly do. I think I had a 4 or 6 RPM motor, something like that on it, just so it would take a little bit of time going down and around. And I had about probably a 15 or 16 inch arm on it, something like that. So it traveled a good, 30, 32 inches all over.
Yeah, Dave Landler says, "Hey, Miles."
Hi there. Miles says hi back.
I'm fascinated by animation and animatronics anyway. It's really coming a long way in the hobby. I haven't got into any of that stuff. It's right up my alley to do electronics side of it, but
It's really fascinating because some things need to be slowed down and some things just need to be naturally about the same speed they are in full size, or they don't look right.
yeah,
You know,
scale or selectively compressed
yeah.
timeline. Or
I mean, if you figure that a sign is spinning, a Pegasus at a mobile gas station is spinning 4 times a minute or whatever. If you took that and took 1/48th of it down to old gauge or 1/87th of that speed, it would spin so slowly it wouldn't be worth doing.
yeah,
So you really have to spin it at the same 4 RPM. But by the same token, there are other things that if you do them at full speed, like the speed of the train or speed of an automobile or whatever, you better be slowing that down because it's not going to look right at all. So you really have to be kind of cognizant of what you're trying to do and what the scene is before you animate it. Give it some thought.
Wise, the fast clock causes all kinds of problems in a lot of ways. I prefer to operate the fast clock for a very similar reason, but there's a lot of things that scale really well. Running mainline, especially on our shorter than optimal or shorter than should be mainline operations are great, but switching a yard basically takes the same amount of time. Switching an industry takes about the same amount of time, as the prototype. So,
yeah, exactly right. And that's one problem that you have on some of these big railroads, that they take off with a train and they get to a yard in a relatively short period of time, but the switching crew doesn't have time to make up another train because it still takes them 30 minutes or an hour to break down and make up a train. That's how long it would take in real life.
yep. And I say one of the biggest things that we miss on is in every part of the hobby is the detail. So, I mean, of course, that's why I love this fine scale caliber or whatever of work that I strive so hard to achieve, that, and all the detail, the track work, the trash and stuff in scenes that show that humans have been there. So it's messy. The detail makes it, but in operations too, and people don't slow down, they rush through it. But if you did everything the prototype did, because on the prototype, they do things like, so they don't die, basically.
Yes.
That equipment's heavy. And if they went through it in reverse and, somebody get hurt. So
yeah.
Slow down. So I do everything I can to make it harder, slow it down.
I was talking about, I did a thing on hand signals, I think, on Train Masters, and I think I did it someplace else. I even used to do a clinic on hand signals. But when I did the switchman's class, when I was hiring out at the Southern Pacific, and you gave the signal for air to hook up the air hoses, and you didn't go in between those cars until that engineer gave you a toot. Because what he was saying was, I see you.
Yeah.
And if you didn't hear him toot, he didn't know you were in there, and you didn't want to be in between. If somebody else would tell him to move, you take off, and you won't take off.
No. If you want to make it home, if we run the operations of our layout as if there was lives at stake, we'd do it differently. So it's in the detail too.
That's right.
And it's a tough balance because you could go too far and it's not any fun, or you could not do it enough, or you could do it all for fun and it's not realistic enough, in my opinion, to be as enjoyable as it can be. All right, now I got enough ribs I could support this thing. And if all my measurements work out right, that works. And I'm basically building I've got a substructure, a base, and I have 3 or 4 buildings on going against the back, a couple streets and things crossing over the docks, etc., that all set in place. But this structure would have took a whole lot of support to hold everything up, since it's a half of a roof. So I'm build it all into the base and just wrap the structure right around that base. Take the whole diorama off to get to the back of the building, but not that hard to do that. So
no.
All right.
Amazing. Sometimes it's easier to scratch build something like that than it is to take somebody's kit and figure out what you're doing.
It is. It's taken me a whole lot of work to do that. I wish I had a good mechanism for laser cutting brick. I need to buy a laser cutter, and they have got much more affordable. But much more affordable is the difference in the price of a car and something cheaper than a car. So.
There comes Ralph. Maybe. There he is.
Hey, Ralph.
He froze.
The internet's working well for everybody tonight.
Using Gorilla Glue?
They're wood glue. It's just Gorilla brand, but it's a regular. I like their wood glue. It's got a really nice consistency. It's a good glue. And I like polyurethane or whatever type of glue that is, or that Gorilla Glue is a weird chemical compound of a glue. It's a very, very interesting glue if you read about it, use it the correct way. People put it on and expect it to just be a glue. It's not. It's a foam, and it's water activated. So if you want it to activate, you need to spray it with some water. And you could use it like you would use spray foam.
Yeah. Hi, Ralph.
Good day. I'm thoroughly ticked off.
Uh-oh, what?
I didn't do it.
On the way home from the shop today, a little bit of snow, and some idiot drove into me.
Oh, no.
So that's why I'm late getting on.
Were you in your Ferrari or the pickup?
The Ferrari.
Oh, man. That's bad news.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, up here, we have what they call no-fault insurance.
Yep.
So you have to go to a reporting center, and that's where all the time comes in.
Uh-huh.
Normal accident, you could have had it all cleared up in a half an hour. Instead, you wait for 2 hours at a reporting center. Just so they can put a little sticker on your car and say it's been looked at by the police.
How about, did it do a lot of damage?
No. Just the aggravation of spending the time, basically.
Yeah.
Pardon me, wasting the time. I don't know why all of a sudden my mic didn't want to work. It was plugged in. I had no sound.
That's not good.
I'm going to try it again. Can you hear me?
Oh, very well. Yeah.
I don't hear a thing.
Really? Nice and loud.
Except I don't hear you guys.
So,
so much for the mic. It worked once before.
You on a Mac?
No, it's on an iPad.
Oh.
I was trying to speed things up because it takes so long to come on with my computer.
Is that a 3-ring plug or 4-ring?
It's got 3 black rings. Where's the camera? There.
Yeah, that's a 4-pinner. Well, what I found was I had to go to the Mac store, and I bought one that had the 4 rings just like that, and then it has a green and a pink knobbing on it, receiver, one for the mic, one for the speaker.
Yeah.
You can't just plug that 4 plugger in because that'll lock your speaker out. You're right. But if you get that adapter, it has, I've already packed mine to go to Amherst, but It's got the 4-pin plug that goes into the iPad or even the Mac computer, and then it has 2 receivers out on the other end, one green, one pink. Green's for the.
Okay, I have a Y connector coming tomorrow.
Yeah, with 4 pins.
That one's for the headphones and one's for the microphone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, that's what he's talking about. That's what you need.
And you need 4 pins on that one that you plug into the iPad. But if you get that, it'll work great.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you need to order a cable like that, look for them. TRRS, a regular TRS tip rig sleeve, but it has like 3 bands, so 4 points of contact. TRRS tip rig sleeve. Yeah.
So I don't know whether you can see this behind me.
Layout.
Oh, that's looking great, bro.
Why?
Nice looking building.
Yeah, it's coming along well. Oh, and you got your flyover done. Your walkway. That looks awesome.
Well, it's just sitting on a table right now. That's all. But I managed to get the what do you call it? The stills done.
The window sills.
Still the jury, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, cool.
And then there's the receiving tanks that go in there as well.
He throws it. There we go. Yeah, that's cool.
It's just I haven't decided what to paint the inside color.
Gray.
I figure the floor can be an industrial gray color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the walls, I don't know, maybe a light green or something.
Yeah, start out good.
Light green or gray.
Yeah.
And then my plan was the floor that has these things on it, the one with the tall windows. I'm going to put clear acetate and light that floor. On the other floors, I'm going to put clear acetate and frost it.
With dull coat?
Yeah.
It's a good technique. I see a lot of people not do that, but that's an awful easy technique that I just don't see a lot of people do.
Well, the thing is, if you do like a normal factory, you can paint out some of the panes from the inside and still frost it.
Yeah.
Because you see that quite a bit. They paint it with a light coat of paint, so some of the light still comes through, but it stops the direct sunlight.
Yeah.
Forgot I had some support structure in here. I need to get gator foam. I should have made this roof out of that, but I can't get ply in very large sheets, so I had to glue pieces together to build up a big enough roof. So I have to cut around those gaps, and then I have a working support.
What building is that?
This is that imagine that laser art structure.
Oh, okay.
But I needed a slope roof. That's what the prototype had on it. Even as large a structure as that is, it still had a slope roof on the prototype. So I built diorama base, and then I'm building all the supporting structure there instead of having to build a whole bunch of interior supporting structure. And then I've got little lips and stuff on my boxes, and I can put a couple legs on the back of the box, and it'll just that right in there. Doesn't need anything more than that. And it's as easy as anything to slide the diorama or module out, take the boxes out, and, put machinery in them, or whatever.
But roofs go on so much easier when you have 3-4 walls to work with.
They do, but this being a flat, I didn't have, you know, that this is it. This is all the structure.
Or is it being Andy?
Pardon?
Being Andy.
Yeah.
You could still, you're still going to have to put sidewalls on that thing, even though it's a flat. So
it gets wood. The backside you can't see, so I'll build my foam core support over there will be the back wall. You can't see it.
That's only 2 walls. Then you have one on the other side.
Yeah, it doesn't need a wall. You can't see it. Can't get anywhere close to it.
But that's going to support your roof.
Yeah, and that's so I'll have a piece of I'll make another rib just out of foam core for over there. It'll support the roof over there. Then this rib will support the roof, and then all the boxes can have the supporting structure in here too. So this box can set in there by having, you know, I'll put a rib on that.
I'm surprised you don't have the sides on already.
And then I've only got one side to go on here, and figuring out how much, you know, what size that needed to be was rather difficult. And I have to have it custom built, so I have to have it laser cut from Dick Basney's going to cut it for me, but I needed an exact measurement, and I tried my best to lay this thing out and get an exact measurement. And so I'm building the substructure. He's got the drawing for exactly what I want. I just tell him how much of it I need. He'll cut me the end wall to match much of what the prototype looked like originally. But that way I can go ahead and finish the front of the structure. So I've got a support, you know, got this module. I'll have this support finished. By the next show that we have, I'll put another couple ribs in here. The building can be permanent in there. And then we can go to putting, I've got to put some roads and detail there. Then I've got a couple of my other structures that we've built. And all the road coming along those could all be on these small diorama pieces. So easy to work with.
Okay.
But that'll get us to a stopping point tonight. By the time I get a couple more ribs made, that'll be a permanent structure that we can carry on with. So we'll have that one about, you know, shortly after we get back from the Springfield show. It'll be time for the February show. We'll finish this structure's mount up on the base and can carry on. That way I put all my I'm really looking forward to that etched metal build that etched metal staircase, fire escapes and stuff. Gotta make it really good, especially after watching Miles' video where he did it. He really got me excited about doing that. I've never even taken the one I've got out of the package, so.
Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing both of you next week at Springfield.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that show.
Be cool to get together.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for everybody for joining us. We'll finish this show up for tonight. Look forward to seeing you guys back in February. Johnny, take us out.
Teach you to take a bathroom break.
Really? Okay. Yeah, nobody heard that, but I was telling Andy, yeah, he called me with my pants down. I wasn't ready for him to shut it down so quick. But, well, thank everybody for coming in on the chat. Miles, Ralph, Andy, thank you for the show. I want to say go to youtubemallbuilders.com. There you can check the schedule for the shows we have for the Tuesday and Wednesday shows. Those are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Thursday show is at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Be sure and click on the e-mag, sign up for email notification when that comes out. And we shall see you tomorrow night for Into the Locomotive Shop. That will be at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Joe's got a little different format for tomorrow night's show, and I think everybody's going to enjoy it. Get to see something a little bit different there. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So, y'all have a good night. We shall see you tomorrow night. All right, bye.
Night, Johnny.